The Democrats are rushing impeachment forward, and despite the calls to not have the impeachment by people like Lindsey Graham and various other Senate Republicans who are like, look, this is a tinderbox, it's going to explode. Please, I'm begging you, stop being maniacs who make your position look even more weak than it does by acting in this way. Instead, Nancy Pelosi and the rest of them are rushing it through. Nancy Pelosi said, the president's threat to America is urgent, and so too will our action. It's not really de-radicalizing people, is it? It's not de-escalation.
No, I mean, we saw her yesterday, how deranged she is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I imagine she's only just going to keep going.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to suggest that Trump is cool and calm in the White House like a cucumber or something.
No.
You know, just for anyone who may think that we're just being
uncharitable.
Yeah, uncharitable and just nakedly partisan. No, Trump's team is obviously in chaos. Chad Wolf resigned. Like there have been a slew of resignations. There's a mob that's coming for the MAGA crowd and Trump. It's not looking good on either side. But anyway, so the impeachment article invokes the 14th Amendment, which is a post-Civil War era addition to the Constitution, which prohibits anyone who engaged in insurrection or rebellion from holding future office. Lawmakers also cited specific language from Mr. Trump's speech on Wednesday, riling up the crowd, quoting him saying, if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Well, that's rather uncharitable, given how they say that they fight like hell all the time. They're constantly, the AOC, the squad, all of them are constantly saying, we're fighting for this, we're fighting for that. This is completely standard rhetoric in US politics, and because it means campaigning. It doesn't mean open civil war, it doesn't mean picking up the rifles and the muskets and marching in lines so we'll die. What it means is just campaigning to persuade and change minds. That's obviously the way that Trump was using it, but we'll get to a clip in a minute. The New York Times, of course, corralled a bunch of anti-Trump Republicans together. So you get Tom Reed, a New York Republican. We must look to alternatives that could allow Congress to bar Mr. Trump from holding federal office in future. Just seems very much like, honestly, it's starting to look kind of like the Phantom Menace. I'm not even going to lie. There's some sort of coup going on. Like there's just general agreement that Trump will just be sidelined because they can do it and they've got the access to the levers of power. So what can they do? But anyway,
why should they stop? You know?
Yeah, why should they stop? Exactly. What's the point? Trump is being charged with inciting violence against the government of the United States when he sowed false claims about election fraud and encouraged his supporters at a rally at the White House to take extraordinary measures to stop the counting of electoral votes underway at the Capitol. He didn't do that. In all of this, President Trump gravely endangered the security of the United States and its institution of government, the articles of impeachment read. He threatened the integrity of the democratic system, interfered with the peaceful transfer of power, and imperiled a co-equal branch of government. He thereby betrayed his trust as president to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. What manifest injury? What are they talking about? But anyway, the GOP blocked Pelosi's demand for some sort of expedited passage of the bill. So it's just going to go at normal speed. So the speed it's going, it's actually going to conclude after Trump has left office. So they'll have impeached someone who isn't the president for something that really is not really true, I don't think. I just don't think he was calling for violence. But let's play the clip. This is the explicit language that he's using.
And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity.
Okay.
Peacefully and patriotically make your way to the Capitol.
Yeah.
And make your voices heard. Okay. That's not a man calling for a coup.
And that's not an incitement to violence. And that That's way more restrained than the Democrats themselves have been, but we'll get to that in a bit, right?
But there's my point. Like, if that's now the standard, if you saying do this peacefully is enough to say you're inciting violence,
Yeah.
they're in massive trouble.
Well, there's no further political dialogue to be had from the MAGA perspective. What they're doing is saying that any advocacy from the perspective of MAGA is a form of terrorism. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves, right? So let's... Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my throat today. So this is a CBS reporter called Catherine Herridge, and she tweeted out that the timeline suggests that because of, I don't know, Trump's delay or whatever, certain elements of the protests were already trying to get into the Capitol before Trump had even finished speaking. So before Trump had even finished saying, don't do anything dangerous or violent.
So that clip,
peaceful.
I think, was from the middle of the speech.
Yeah, roughly about the middle of the speech. There were apparently people already trying to push their way in. So I don't know who those people were and why were they doing it. But pipe bombs may have been an effort to pull first responders from the Capitol, further weakening security, who knows. But, I mean, I don't know what the source or the consequence of the pipe bombs were. I saw the reporting, but what does it mean? You know, how does it connect? Who's been held responsible for these? Just random pipe bombs that are around, okay?
Yeah, I don't know what to say either.
Don't know what to say.
It's under investigation.
Yeah, I
I'll
guess
talk
it
about
must
it when
be.
it stopped. Like,
Sorry, John just added a note. But, right, yeah, so Trump had authorised an emergency declaration to deploy the National Guard to D.C. to prevent further violence. As John has just typed, the mayor requested this, the D.C. mayor requested this under COVID measures, but it's clearly about fear of riots and insurrection in the Capitol on the inauguration of Joe Biden.
yeah, so I think it's for the next 2 weeks. Protests were banned
Yeah.
because of the risk of COVID, was the wording. It was like,
Yeah.
who's buying that?
Yeah, but it's obviously not, and Trump has authorized it anyway. So for a man who is under suspicion of conducting a coup, fortifying the Capitol to prevent a coup is a strange maneuver. Unless, of course, all of these National Guards are Trump loyalists, and these are the men who are going to be storming the Capitol on the inauguration of Joe Biden. Obviously, I don't think that's the case. And I don't see any reason to think that's the case. Trump isn't personally directing these National Guard. He just authorized it because he had to.
But they are, I don't know if you saw, they are doing background checks on every member of the National Guard.
Yeah. And I guess background check their Facebook and be like, oh, do they support Trump or not? And only get the ones who don't support Trump. I don't know. But unless, like I said, Trump's putting in nothing but loyalists who are about to take over the Capitol, I don't think that this is indicative of a coup at all. In fact, this seems to be what you do if you want to guard against the coup. So Trump seems to be guarding against his own supporters by doing this. So accusing Trump of conducting a coup just seems to have no merit.
Yeah,
to me.
like Caesar wasn't sending Pompey legions.
No. No, he wasn't guaranteeing the sanctity of Rome from his own legions, right? That's just not what happens. But anyway, so let's take a look at some of the people arrested, because one of the pictures been going around a lot is a chap like this. When we scroll down a little bit, you can see not just to the picture, please, John. Just to the picture. Just you can see that there are some guys who are dressed in kind of military fatigues, combat vests, and have Ziploc ties, and so these people seem to be under increased, of course, suspicion of wanting to conduct nefarious activities. Which, fair.
Yeah, I agree.
Looks like he is. Why have you brought Ziplocs if you're just here to protest? Maybe this guy isn't just here to protest.
Yep.
This was a one Mr. Eric Gavlik Munchel, 30. Sorry, hang on a sec. Who was taken into custody in Nashville on one count of unlawfully entering a restricted building and one count of violent entry and disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. He was carrying the plastic restraints, an item and a holster on his right hip, a cell phone mounted on his chest, with a camera facing forward, presumably to record the events of the day. Munchel was there with his mother, and he says he wanted to show that we're willing to rise up, band together, and fight if necessary, and compared himself and his mother to the Founding Fathers. So, guy had gone down there with his old dear.
Huh.
Weird. I mean, if you're actually planning a coup or an insurrection, do you take your mum?
I don't think she'd be much use. Not being rude, Mum. But
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't want to make allegations. Maybe the mother's the mastermind.
Yeah.
of the coup. Who knows? But there was another.
Mums for coups.
Yeah, there was another chap there called Larry Rendell Brock, who was arrested in Texas on the same charges as he was one of the people. He was clad in a green helmet, tactical vest with patches, black and camo jacket, and beige pants, holding a white flex cuff, which was used by law enforcement to restrain and detain subjects. Yep, okay. Suspicious. Presumably these people were looking to commit some kind of unlawful activity. I noticed they didn't go guns, though, which is what I would expect from people who actually expected to conduct a coup. I don't know how you expect to restrain congressmen and senators if you don't have guns. Because they did have guns and they shot someone. So anyway, the Q Shaman was arrested and he is now on apparently a hunger strike because they won't feed him organic food. Well, I just don't know what to tell you. This guy seems quite mad, to be honest. He seems to believe all the QAnon wacko stuff. There are people accusing him of being a white supremacist because he's got like Nordic tattoos. But I have to side with the Nordic history professionals here and say, look, these are not just white supremacist tattoos. These actually have like, esoteric and spiritual connotations that New Agers use and stuff like that. And after listening to a few of this guy's interviews, he sounds a lot more like an esoteric New Ager than he does a white supremacist. But I might be wrong. He may well be a white supremacist. I'm not judging. I'm not saying that I know either way. He just really seems like a wacko who thinks that, the big banks are taking over and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, so you get the media response to this. Now, the New York Times published this piece, the bogusness of anti-impeachment Republicans. Suddenly they're like unity and feared divisiveness. Where was that spirit when the election results were being counted? There were legal challenges going on. And so these are something that you should have also got on board with if you feel that your guy had done nothing wrong. Surely the legal challenges would have shown that your guy did nothing wrong. But he says at the end, this does not mean we must cast out the 74 million Americans who voted for the president, but it must mean we repudiate the lies, cruelty, and cult of personality on which Trump built his movement. Man, that's amazing projection, isn't it? Lies, cruelty, and cult of personality. Incredible. And the thing about the Trump cult of personality, right, and I'm not going to say he doesn't have one. He of course does. Every public figure ends up accruing some kind of cult of personality. But the thing about Trump's is that it's predicated on the idea that Trump is actually a fallible human. It's really funny. Whenever you watch any of the boomers who are talking about him at the protests, they're like, yeah, but doesn't Trump do all these bad things? They go, yeah, he's not perfect. And
Well, it's not even that. They'll sort of giggle and say, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Funny.
So, some of them like it because it's provocative and it's, naughty. But it's a very strange cult of personality that doesn't actually have glorious, shining veneration for the leader and just accepts that he makes mistakes and says stupid things occasionally.
Not even that. It seems like part of the cult of personality is he's a bit of a bumbling fool.
Yes.
Like he's our bumbling fool kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, so. Exactly. But anyway, it means Republicans will have to acknowledge the truth that Joe Biden won in a free and fair election. Yes, comrade. I believe Joe Biden got 81 million votes freely and fairly. And I have to say that because of YouTube. And apologise to their voters and the country for help stoke the madness that struck the Capitol. And the alternative is false unity that leaves the wound of last Wednesday to fester until the infection gets worse than it already is. I don't think this is going to heal anytime soon. Like I think this is going to get a lot worse. And I just think that like the ramming through of the impeachment and desperately trying to do everything they can to hurt Trump and the MAGA movement is going to blow up in their faces. And this. Again, I actually think we're heading. The Americans are heading towards a civil war scenario at this point. But anyway, the New York Post, an author for the New York Post, one Kelly Jane Torrance, a member of the New York Post editorial board, published this in MSNBC.
Yeah.
And she argues the case. She says he did not call for a coup, nor did he tell his supporters to invade the home of the legislative branch, which he didn't. Meanwhile, Democrats have never even censured those in their party who encouraged lawlessness on Twitter. Lawlessness last year, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris urged people to donate post bail for those arrested for protests and riots in Minneapolis, for example. Mobs should not be emboldened no matter their politics. Impeachment isn't meant to be virtue signaling, but it's how the Democrats are treating it. They're not trying to restrain Trump during his remaining days in office. They're trying to ensure he never serves in office again. But that's not up to them, that's up to the American people. Democrats and many Republicans have made it clear they want Trump to disappear from public life forever. However, they don't need to abuse the Constitution to do it. Let Trump leave in ignominy, which will happen on January the 20th. Even if the Democrats do nothing, The country will move forward under a new president who then won't have to start his term under the shadow of his predecessor. I think she's completely right. I think that's...
I agree with almost every word there.
Yeah, that's a totally fair analysis. And I have been arguing this whole time. The Democrats, by taking these sort of belligerent actions against their political opponents, not only reveal the weakness of their own position and their own apparent insecurity, but it reveals a malevolence that underlies the project of what they're trying to achieve that I just don't think is reconcilable with a civil society. Like, this is not going to end here, as much as I hate to say that. You know, I would love to say, okay, well, it's all over, we're back to life as normal, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And I think that her point that, look, the Democrats really need to shut up and wind their necks in on the inciting violence thing, definitely needs to. I mean, this trended on Twitter the other day. Hang Mike Pence was trending on Twitter. Twitter let that trend. That was trending for hours. Hang Mike Pence. And yet Parler gets suspended for failing to moderate the incitement to violence. But if we can go to the next one, John, just look at that. It's politics trending. Hang Mike Pence. That's fine. And Twitter is...
I mean, if they go for impeachment, it goes to the Senate and you have like a full proper trial, don't you?
Yeah.
So we'll get to see this all play out. Are they really going
to
sit there in that chamber and try and claim that you've incited violence, blah, 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 by saying be peaceful, and we've done nothing?
Well, I mean, let's play the next clip of them inciting riots.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick them.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized up to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Look, as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
If you think we're rallying now, you ain't seen nothing yet.
But there are plenty of these. I mean, like the Trump campaign must have made like 3 or 4 of these.
Yeah, loads.
Over the summer. And it's sort of like that meme magic that is politics, where these people can't help themselves, can they? No. Like, they obviously know how compromised they are, but they just keep going.
Yeah, well, now it seems to be like the big lie that they're propagating. It's like Trump was the one inciting violence, even though he said the opposite. And they're not the ones inciting violence, even though they're literally saying, get out in the streets, make sure that you make their lives hell. Like, again, and this, the reason that I'm doing this book club on lock is because really we're talking about the will that underpins the actions and the motives for it, right? What we're talking about is the establishment of a civil society means we're not actively working against one another and trying to destroy one another, and that's not what you can take from that. You can't say that the Democrats aren't actively trying to destroy Trump and the MAGA movement, because they are. But and in fact, we can see exactly how they are, because apparently Democrats in both the House and the Senate are planning to draft legislation to classify MAGA rallies as domestic terrorist activity and require the FBI, DOJ, and DHS to take steps to prevent such domestic terrorism. That's mad. Now, MAGA itself is going to be seen as domestic terrorism. That's insane. That's like a third of the country that they're going to stigmatize as terrorists.
Imagine if saying riding with Biden is a domestic terrorist organization.
Right.
I mean, let's talk about the people for Bernie.
That would be 5% of the country would be stigmatized as terrorists.
Yeah. But I mean, like the people for Bernie account the other day was tweeting out the other day, literally just, these people are terrorists. We must get rid of all of them. Like really extreme rhetoric.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
if MAGA are, then at least Bernie's crowd is gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bernie's crowd have committed acts of terrorism, as Steve Scalise can testify to. But this was Meghan McCain, John McCain's daughter, saying that she's not against sending these people to Gitmo, saying the domestic terrorists who stormed the Capitol should be treated the same way we treat Al Qaeda, which just shows that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? Mad, obviously. Then you've got a squad newcomer. Now, the squad being the radical left faction of the Democratic Party, sort of the Montagnards from the French Revolution analogy. This is one Cori Bush of Missouri. She's a freshman who plans to introduce a resolution on Monday that could lead to the harshest possible sanction of sitting House members, which is expulsion. It's only happened 5 times in the nation's history. She's a new member of the squad, and she says, tomorrow I'm introducing my resolution to expel members of Congress who tried to overturn the election and incited a white supremacist coup attempt that has left people dead. Okay, that's mad. Just insane framing.
Where's the evidence for the white supremacist part?
None. The guy with Norse tattoos.
Is that it?
I guess.
Convincing.
Baked Alaska.
Very convincing.
Notorious idiot.
Like 2 out of what? How many were there? I mean, we saw the pictures of the crowd. There must be several 100,000.
Presumably that little old lady who had a flag, she was probably a white supremacist. But anyone's a white supremacist. But this just goes to show you the kind of lunatics who are getting involved.